Welcome to the Midnight Archives. The old city of San Aurelio had always carried an air of quiet mystery. Tucked between the mountains and the sea, its streets whispered stories that no one quite dared to tell out loud. Among its oldest buildings stood St. Mary's Asylum, a vast stone structure built in the late 1800s, when the world still believed that faith could cure what science could not. For decades, St. Mary's had housed the forgotten, women without families, orphans, and those society preferred to hide behind thick walls and whispered prayers. But in the spring of 1952, the asylum would become the center of a story that even today, the locals still refuse to talk about after sunset. Her name was Elena Ramos. She was 20 years old, born in a small coastal village. Her mother had died when she was just a child, and her father, a fisherman, had vanished one night at sea. For years, Elena worked as a housemaid in the homes of the wealthy, quiet and invisible, until one morning she simply stopped showing up. No one knew where she had gone until weeks later, when she was found wandering near the harbor, barefoot and trembling. The police took her to St. Mary's Asylum, where the nuns agreed to care for her until her family could be located. But there was no family to call. The reports from that time describe her as lucid but disturbed. She would speak softly, then fall silent for hours, staring at a corner of the room as if listening to something only she could hear. When asked, she would whisper, "They don't want me here." At first, the sisters assumed she was simply frightened, another soul broken by hardship. But strange things began to happen soon after her arrival. One of the nurses, Sister Magdalena, was the first to notice it. She said the temperature in Elena's room would drop suddenly, so cold that her breath would fog in front of her face. At night, footsteps echoed down the empty hallway, always stopping at Elena's door. The other patients complained of whispers coming from the walls, and sometimes, in the dim light of the chapel, the candles closest to Elena would flicker and die, even when no wind was blowing. The Mother Superior, Sister Clara, tried to dismiss it as imagination, yet her own journal, later recovered by investigators, told a different story. In one entry dated May 3rd, she wrote, "Elena sleeps, but something lingers near her bed. I can feel it. It watches. It waits." During the following days, Elena's behavior grew more erratic. She would cry out in the middle of prayers, claiming that someone was pulling her hair or touching her arms. The sisters searched the room, but found no one. The first physical marks appeared on her third night. Red scratches along her wrists and shoulders, too high for her to have made them herself. The doctor assigned to St. Mary's, Dr. Julian Ortega, was called to examine her. He found no logical explanation. "The wounds are shallow," he wrote, "but consistent with fingernail abrasions made by another person." When he questioned Elena, she told him, almost in a whisper, "It's not a person." Over the next few weeks, the incidents intensified. Patients in nearby rooms reported hearing low murmurs and sometimes laughter, faint and cruel. The nuns began to pray every night outside Elena's door, holding candles until dawn. Despite their efforts, the strange phenomena didn't stop. The lights would flicker, water would turn cold without reason, and once, during morning mass, Elena screamed and collapsed, claiming that someone had bitten her. Sister Magdalena swore she saw the marks form before her eyes, small crescent-shaped bruises along Elena's shoulder. Terrified, she fled the room. When Dr. Ortega arrived, he photographed the injuries. The photos still exist, kept in the diocesan archives under lock and key. The authorities were informed, but the case never reached the newspapers. In those days, stories like that were buried quickly for fear of public scandal. The church sent word to the bishop, who dispatched a visiting priest. Father Michael Hale, a man known for his calm demeanor and quiet faith. Father Hale first met Elena on June 8th. By then, she had been confined to a small room near the infirmary. According to his written statement, she greeted him with a strange kind of sadness. She told him that the nights were the worst because They would come when the bells struck 3. He asked who they were. She only said, "The ones who hide in the dark." Father Hale's journal describes their encounters in detail. In his words, "When I entered her room, I felt an emptiness I cannot describe. She seemed aware of something I could not see. Her eyes followed it, and her voice trembled when she spoke. There was no sign of madness, only fear." The priest decided to spend the night at St. Mary's. What happened then remains one of the strangest accounts ever recorded in the asylum's history. At exactly 3 in the morning, according to multiple witnesses, a sharp noise echoed through the corridor, like something heavy striking the walls. The air grew cold, and the lamps along the hall began to flicker. Sister Clara, who was praying in the chapel, reported hearing Elena's voice crying for help. When the sisters reached her room, the door was locked from the inside. They forced it open. Elena was on the floor, trembling, her nightgown torn. The doctor's notes say that new marks appeared across her arms, identical in pattern to human bite wounds. Father Hale, visibly shaken, wrote later, "We saw the impressions form as if by invisible hands. I cannot explain it. I am a man of faith, but I am also a man of reason. That night, both failed me." After that night, Father Hale refused to speak to journalists, but he continued to visit Elena daily. He brought her food, prayed beside her, and tried to comfort her in silence. The sisters noticed that when he was present, the disturbances seemed to calm, the air warmer, the silence gentler. But the peace never lasted long. One evening, while Father Hale was away attending Mass, Elena began to sing softly. The nurse on duty described the sound as beautiful and wrong at the same time, a melody in a language no one recognized. Moments later, every light in the infirmary went out. When power returned, Elena was sitting by the window, staring out at the sea. Her voice was gone. She did not speak for 3 days. By the end of that month, St. Mary's Asylum had become a place of fear. Nurses quit, patients were relocated, and even the local clergy advised against entering Elena's room alone. Yet Father Hale insisted on continuing his visits. His final entry in his journal before the records abruptly stopped reads, "I do not believe she is evil. I believe she is trapped in something we do not yet understand. I will not abandon her." The following weeks at St. Mary's felt like an invisible fog that refused to lift. The sisters moved quietly, whispering prayers under their breath. The students avoided the east corridor entirely, the one that led to the old infirmary where Elena had last been seen walking before her collapse. The church dispatched Father Brennan, a man known for his calm authority and skeptical mind. He arrived with 2 assistants and a briefcase of notes, determined to bring reason back to what he called a house drowned in superstition. When he first met Elena, she was lying in the infirmary, her wrists bandaged from where she had scratched herself. Her eyes, once bright and curious, stared blankly toward the ceiling. But when Father Brennan leaned closer, she suddenly turned her head and whispered, "They don't like your light." He stepped back unsettled. "Who doesn't?" Elena's lips trembled. "The ones who live here now." That night, Brennan walked through the convent with Sister Magdalena, the oldest nun in residence. She carried a small lantern that flickered against the stone walls. "We built this place on the remains of another," she explained softly. "Before St. Mary's, it was a hospital for the poor. Many died here, alone, forgotten. Some say their souls never left." The priest listened, but he wasn't one for ghost stories. "I believe in evil," he said, "but not in shadows that walk." Magdalena looked at him sadly. "You'll believe soon enough." The following morning, Brennan gathered the sisters and began a blessing in the chapel. Elena was brought in, restrained for her safety. Her breathing was fast, shallow, and her eyes darted around the room as if seeing things no one else could. When the priest began the prayer, she started to shake. The air turned cold and the candles flickered violently though no windows were open. Brennan's voice faltered. Elena's body arched backward, her scream echoing through the nave like something not quite human. Sister Teresa tried to hold her, whispering prayers, but Elena broke free and threw herself to the floor. Her voice, lower, foreign, spoke in a tone that froze everyone. "You should have left us buried." The crucifix above the altar fell, striking the marble with a sound that seemed to split the world in two. Brennan ordered the others out. He stayed with Elena alone, praying over her as she gasped and trembled. The sisters outside heard the struggle, then silence. When they dared to return, Brennan was kneeling beside her, drenched in sweat, his hands shaking. "She's gone," he said. But he wasn't certain what "gone" meant. Elena's body was cold, yet peaceful. Her lips curved slightly, almost smiling. They buried her in the small cemetery behind the convent, under the olive tree. The local parish registered the death as natural causes following exhaustion. Weeks later, strange things continued to happen. The bells rang at odd hours, even when unstrung. A shadow was seen standing by the infirmary window, and every night Sister Teresa heard soft footsteps in the corridor, stopping at her door. 3 knocks, always 3. One night she opened it. No one was there, but on the floor lay a rosary. Elena's rosary, the one that had been buried with her. By spring, Father Brennan left St. Mary's, citing illness. He returned to his parish and never spoke publicly about the events again. In his private journal, however, he wrote one final note before his death years later. "I tried to explain it as madness. I told myself the girl was broken by grief, by guilt, by isolation. But at night, I still hear her voice, calm, distant, asking if I can finally see them too." Today, the convent is abandoned. Locals say the structure still stands, its windows boarded and the chapel overgrown with ivy. Some who pass by claim they hear chanting from within, though no one dares to enter. The few who did, urban explorers, thrill-seekers, never stayed long. One man described hearing a woman humming softly near the old infirmary, a tune both beautiful and sad. When he turned toward the sound, there was no one there, only a faint smell of candle wax and lavender. He left that night and never returned. The church denies any record of Elena Ramos ever existing. Her name appears in no registry, no parish document, no convent record. It's as if she was erased. But those who lived near St. Mary's remember the girl in white who used to walk the gardens at dusk, the one who spoke kindly to everyone, the one who, even after death, was said to keep vigil over those who suffered in silence. Some say she was a victim of her own faith. Others whisper she became part of what haunted her. And sometimes when the wind passes through the olive tree that still grows behind the convent, locals swear they hear her voice again, soft, distant, echoing through the night. Please, don't let them forget me. If you want to uncover more hidden files, subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with the Midnight Archives. You've been watching the Midnight Archives. The next file unlocks soon.